Hello and welcome to another Big Finish review, and today we're going to be touching on a story that I've wanted to cover for quite some time now, one of the more recent releases from this monthly range, The Plight of the Pimpernel by Chris Chapman. But before we get into the review, I'd just like to ask, if you haven't already, please support the channel by hitting subscribe, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and you can find and follow me on social media at the links here.
You are here to rescue us in a coffin.
Correct. Your alternative is the sharp embrace of Madame la Guillotine.
You're him, aren't you?
Oh, him? Yeah, well, yes, I suppose I am, yeah. You are currently being rescued by the Scarlet Pimpernel.
On the surface, this appears to be your traditional celebrity historical, where the 6th Doctor and Peri arrive in 1793 in the midst of the French Revolution, where they encounter the aristocrats of Percy Blakeney, also known as the Scarlet Pimpernel, and assist him in his mission to rescue the victims of Madame la Guillotine in France. The only problem is, the Scarlet Pimpernel is a fictional character, and while the Doctor can't resist playing the masked handsome hero, he can't shake the feeling that their interference may be causing trouble to the web of time. So while they initially go along with his request, they covertly investigate the situation and discover that the Pimpernel isn't actually who he says he is.
Peri, you're safe. I'm so glad. Tell me of Paris and your Pimpernel.
Can it, Percy?
Her ladyship has just been bringing me up to speed.
I'd love to hear those stories.
I'm sure. But I think, first of all, we'd like to know a little more about the past. Your past.
Do I deserve that tone of voice, Doctor?
Oh, yes. You definitely do.
Percy, you said you've been Lord of this manor the last 4 years?
Yes, that is true.
But where were you before that?
What is common knowledge, certainly among my gossiping staff. I was born out of wedlock during my father's military service. Upon his untimely death, he left no heir, and I was able to return to this manor and prove my right to his baronetcy. There was no shame in my story.
It certainly is a story.
And that birthright must have been an expensive bribe.
I'm sorry.
I've read about you, Percy. I've read of the exploits of the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I've adored reading about you. But those books were fiction, Percy. You were fiction.
So how are you here? How are you talking to us now?
Listen to yourselves. Doctor, how can you be real?
What?
How can you have read books about the times we live through now? What kind of man does that make you?
Well, if I'm saving your life, I have a right to know whose life I'm saving.
The main reason I wanted to cover this particular story is that I feel that it's a perfect thematic finale for the character arcs of both the 6th Doctor and Peri. Not a literal finale, as they're still travelling together, but since this is chronologically the last release with these two together, I wouldn't mind if this is their final story we see of them, because it really comes full circle compared to how they were back in the Twin Dilemma. The Doctor and his abrasive attitude, Peri not really having the confidence to speak out against him. They are very different characters now. The Doctor has finally become a much more kind, heroic figure, and getting to play the Pimpernel really emphasises that, while Peri is a lot more confident in herself and is not afraid to take action and call out the Doctor when she feels that he is taking things too far.
What aren't you telling me?
Oh, we're being us, are we?
Yes, we're being us.
Right. Yeah.
Now, all that stuff upstairs. You don't really think a random French criminal did that to Percy, do you?
What? Inflict injuries that bleed out off-the-scale energy readings? No, I think that's a little beyond the reach of your average continental ruffian.
Then Percy is lying to us.
Maybe he doesn't know that he's lying. Maybe he's lying for what he thinks is a very good reason. It's puzzling, isn't it? But do you know what's a little more puzzling?
I know you'd like to tell me. You're doing that face.
How is it that Sir Percy Blakeney is here at all? How is it that we are tending to a fictional character?
Doctor, we've been over this.
The Scarlet Pimpernel and his alter ego, the poppish Sir Percy Blakeney, I adore them both. But they are creations of the novelist Baroness Orksey. So how are they both bedbound in the east wing of this stately home?
But you can't know that for sure, can you?
It's also a rare case where a story has a mid-episode genre change, where the tone, setting completely shifts from what appears to be a pseudo-historical into full. Initially, the focus is on the setting of the French Revolution and dealing with the moral implications of the Pimpernel's actions, and it gives a bit more depth to the situation and shows that it wasn't that black and white. Yeah, what's happening to the aristocrats isn't exactly nice, but they weren't exactly innocent people.
Percy's quest to rescue the aristocrats of France may ignore how horrid and corrupt they become, but it is undoubtedly an endeavour driven by the desire to save lives. I can only admire that. And with him being in need of an understudy at present, well, how could we refuse?
Oh, I knew it. Self-indulgence.
What?
That is the real reason we're doing whatever he wants, isn't it?
I have always wanted to be the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Of course you have. You're going soft, you know that? I'm sure you used to be more...
Yes, let's not talk about what I used to be.
Which is emphasised in the character of Dunois, who is the embodiment of the peasants' frustration and resentment towards the upper classes, and how much he sees the Pimpernel as a villain rather than a hero from his perspective.
That's his flower, isn't it?
A Pimpernel. A Scarlet Pimpernel. On orders from Citizen Robespierre, I will hunt this Pimpernel, and I will bring him here to the scene of his crime to make the acquaintance of Madame la Guillotine.
However, in part 3, we transition to a completely new location and go straight into full sci-fi. I wouldn't normally be happy with this, as it sometimes can lead to the initial story feeling incomplete or rushed. Here, however, it builds off what we've seen before and leads to the twist and revelation regarding who Percy actually is, and it really puts the character growth of the 6th Doctor and Peri into question, particularly the 6th Doctor here, as he goes through a very traumatic experience that is so heartbreaking, which leads to Peri being afraid that he's going to relapse into his more aggressive nature so it definitely benefits the story to completely shift in this direction, especially since characters like Dunois and the lovable servant character Oliver coming along too, to help maintain a level of consistency, so it feels like one coherent story regardless of how dramatic the tone has shifted. I also appreciate that compared to something like the Reign of Terror, they don't spend forever jumping back and forth between prison cells. The use of both the Doctor and Peri pretending to be the Pimpernel at points in the story actually works in their favour, as it not only shows the Doctor putting his faith in Peri to be okay, but it would have actually been more dangerous for him to go back, as Dunois was looking for someone that matched the Doctor's description, so Peri goes into France unnoticed. I don't really want to go into too much spoilers, it's best you go into the story blind, but something I really love about the ending is Peri confronting the person responsible for the previously mentioned heartbreak the 6th Doctor goes through. It's a really touching moment where she defends him, and it is a very sweet moment to see the two of them actually getting along and being really mature. I don't know if people will be as satisfied with this story on its own, without the context of all the other great 6th Doctor and Peri releases that show the progression of their character arc to get to this point. But on its own, it's a very strong story and links back to TV 6th Doctor and Peri and shows just how different they are now, which I really appreciate and demonstrates just how important these audio stories were for their characters. I thoroughly recommend checking this one out. I've linked this story in the description below if you want to pick up a copy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.